Hello everyone, Soberoni of GNA Reviews here with a servant spotlight for everyone's favorite, definitely not Arturia servant, mysterious Heroine X. We'll be examining her stats and skills, as well as going over pointers on how to utilize her effectively, and an overall grade comparing her to how she stacks up to the other 5-star servants. I also have a spotlight up for the other Saber Wars servant, Saber Lily, linked in the description below, so please do check that out right after this video. Now, onto MHX's stats. MHX has a max HP of 12,696, which is tied for the lowest among all 5-star assassins and is very low overall among 5-star servants. Her max attack of 11,761 is above average for a 5-star assassin, but when you factor in the 0.9 times assassin attack modifier, her attack becomes 10,584, which is near the bottom of all the 5-star servants. Now moving on to her skills. Her first skill, Support Artillery Rank EX, gives her between a 60 to 80% chance to inflict stun on all enemies after one turn. Her second skill is Intuition Rank C+, which grants her between 4 and 14 crit stars, depending on level. And that can be upgraded through a strengthening quest into Star of Saber Rank C++, which will grant her invincibility for a turn, and grant between 10 to 20 crit stars depending on level. Her last skill is Galactic Meteor Sword Rank C, which increases her crit star drop rate against Saber for 3 turns between 50 to 100%, and gives her bonus damage against Sabers for 3 turns between 30 to 50%, both depending on level. Her passives are Cosmo Reactor Rank A, which increases her crit star drop rate by 10%, and Riding EX, which increases her quick card effectiveness by 12%. As for her deck and Noble Phantasm, MHX has a light quick deck with quick, arch, buster, and a quick Noble Phantasm. Her Noble Phantasm is Himitsu Caliber, which deals significant damage to a single target with between a 1200 to 2000% damage modifier, and it deals bonus damage to Arturia faces between 150 to 200% depending on overcharge. It's further strengthened through an interlude, which will increase the attack modifier to between 1600 to 2400 depending on level. And now taking a closer look at her cards, we see that she has 4 hits on her quick card, 2 hits on her arts card, 1 hit on her buster, and 4 hits on her extra. She has a Noble Phantasm gain rate of 0.81% and a star rate of 25.6%. She does have above average Noble Phantasm gain just due to how many hits she has on her quick and extra cards, and she also has very high star generation thanks to the same amount of hits that she does have on her quick and extra cards, as well as her high star rate and her passive. Sometimes when I review servants, I say that they're very niche or have a very limited role, and nowhere is that more true than with MHX. She fills the extremely obscure niche role of being an anti-saber assassin, which is very out there, but does it work? Well, yes and no. One thing she does have going for her is that her skill set does synergize very well with her role. Galactic Meteor Sword is MHX's best skill, and the one you're going to be using the most. It gives her a very significant crit star drop rate increase and damage buff against sabers. A 50% damage buff is gigantic. If you want to look at it this way, Mana Burst is one of the strongest self buffs in the game, and that only applies to one card type for a single turn. So in a way, this skill is kinda like a 3-turn Mana Burst for all your cards. Plus it has a crazy strong crit drop buff on top of it for good measure. Her other 2 skills aren't bad either. Support Artillery can provide a decent chance of stunning multiple enemies, and her Intuition post-interlude actually becomes pretty useful. It becomes what Intuition is supposed to be. I highly recommend leveling Meteor Sword first because that is your best skill, followed by Intuition and then Support Artillery. It's also worth mentioning that MHX's passives also synergize very strongly with her 3rd skill. Don't underestimate her star generating potential, or her damage for that matter, as her Noble Phantasm can deal pretty high damage against Arturia face servants, of which there are a few. And of course, she can deal some damage to riders too. Her main strength comes from being a good crit star generator. Under the right circumstances, she can be just as good as Jack in that regard. And of course, in being an anti-saber support, aka she's an archer support. And since there are many archers that do depend on crit stars, she actually can be a pretty good support for them, pumping out more stars than even Atlanta while also dealing just as much damage to sabers thanks to her 3rd skill is a good combo to have. But outside of those 2 specific things, she's very lacking in every other area. For one thing, outside of some very specific examples, offensive assassins are very weak due to their damage modifier, and not having any quick buffs is not doing MHX any favors. Outside of fighting sabers or riders, MHX just won't be doing any damage. And even then, you're better off just taking an actual archer to face other sabers since they have resistance. And on the other side of the coin, Carmilla, Jack, and Shiki are going to have the offensive assassin market cornered. But the worst thing about her is just the lack of flexibility outside of her niche. She has no buffs against anything non-saber related. Her support artillery skill can be pretty clutch sometimes, but usually it'll miss when you need it the most and be a complete waste. And outside of being a good crit star generator and semi-archer support, she can't do anything else. A simple targetable quick buff or even a charisma would have made her kit so much better. The best team for MHX is of course a team of crit archers. She can do very well when it comes to supporting them since she can hold her own against sabers while also producing more than enough stars for everyone. So pairing her with Emiya, Orion, Nobu, or Gil is your best bet. And she can work well with any crit servant even if they aren't an archer, so feel free to use her with Okita, Ku Prototype, Lancer Alter, Nursery Rhyme, Drake and Mary Reed, Ushi, or Lancelot. To a lesser extent, she can work well as an offensive crit servant herself, making use of her own stars, so long as she does have ample support to back her up. Naturally, Hans and Waver are the best here since they can both buff her overall damage, which she desperately needs, and they can buff her crit damage too. Post-interlude, Liz, Skahak, and Atlanta are also very strong support options for her as well with their crazy buffing abilities. And if you need a further reminder of what MHX is good at, just don't look any further than her Bondcraft Essence. Her Bondcraft Essence is Exterminationless. It gives allies plus 20% damage against saber enemies. And this is great on her because it plays to her strength as an archer support and it really reinforces her role. So I do recommend using it if you get it and want to use her as an archer support. Otherwise, if you don't have that and you're using her alongside other archers, I recommend Imaginary Around to buff both her damage and star generation, or you can use Be Elegant if you just want to pump out more crit stars. If you're using her as an offensive servant, you have a lot more options. You can use Halloween Princess, Holy Night Sign, and Gudao, depending on whether you want to focus more on Noble Phantasm damage, crit damage, or both. And Gem Magecraft or Moonlight Fest are also good choices for a purely offensive, crit-focused MHX. Overall, I do think MHX is passable and even good in the right circumstances. Bringing her alongside Gil or Emiya or Nobu against a team of sabers, for example, will work out very well, as she can make up for all their needs and even dish out a considerable amount of damage. She also fills a strong role as a crit star generator overall, which is somewhat lacking right now. And in the right setup, she can even be a pretty decent offensive threat. The problem is the specific role that she fills isn't really needed. We don't need an anti-saber assassin because we have archers. So while she can be a nice complement to archers, in most cases you're just better off bringing another archer instead of her. And her damage still pales in comparison to Jack or King Hassan when he comes out. Even some other 4-stars like Carmilla and Shiki are going to out-damage her most of the time, because MHX lacks any kind of non-saber related attack buff, which severely hampers her damage. All that said though, it's clear that she's a 5-star if by stats alone. She's better than most 4-star assassins, has a strong invincibility, and as obscure and unnecessary as it is, she's still good in her niche. So she barely gets a C+ from me. And for reference, in my book, a C is for someone who just barely qualifies as being worthy of their rarity, and she gets the extra points for still being an amazing star generator and saber killer. And those are my thoughts on MHX. A decent enough assassin. If you need a good crit star generator or even an offensive assassin, it might be worth throwing a few tickets at the gacha, or maybe a couple 10 rolls. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. And please don't forget to check out the Saber Lily Spotlight, also up on the channel right now, and leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and consider subscribing if you really enjoyed the video. And if you haven't already, please do join the party over at our Discord and follow us on Twitter. And with all that said, I'll see you all in the next Spotlight. Soberoni out. Later.